What finally made you stop trying to earn your mother's love? I begged her to just listen. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just said, "You're not my problem." That's when it finally hit me. I was never her child, just her burden. I think deep down I always knew something was off. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. Other kids talked about hugging their moms, about bedtime stories, about moms brushing their hair or kissing scraped knees. I used to nod along like I understood, but none of that was familiar to me. My mom wasn't cruel exactly. She fed me, dressed me, picked me up from school, but everything she did felt like she was checking off a list, like parenting was a performance she had to get through without making eye contact. I used to watch her in the mornings, staring at herself in the mirror like she was waiting for someone else to show up. She'd do her makeup with precision, pull her hair into tight styles and whisper little phrases under her breath, like mantras. Don't be soft, keep it clean. No one gets to see you crack. I once asked her what she was saying. She looked at me through the mirror and said, "You wouldn't understand, you haven't earned the right to." I was 9. I spent years trying to figure out what the right was. If I got good grades, if I didn't cry, if I didn't eat too much or too little, if I made my own lunch, folded laundry, didn't ask for things. Maybe then she'd soften, but she didn't, and then when I was 11 something shifted. She stopped tucking me in, started locking her bedroom door, started disappearing in the evenings with no explanation. And when I asked about it, she snapped, "You're old enough to figure things out yourself." My dad wasn't around. He left when I was 6. No custody battle, no weekend visits, just gone. My mom told everyone he abandoned us, that she was doing everything alone. But once in middle school, I found a birthday card hidden in the back of the kitchen junk drawer. It was addressed to me, from him. Dated 3 years after he'd disappeared. The card was unopened. I stared at it for an hour before putting it back. I didn't even open it. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared of what it might say. Maybe I didn't want to know that he had tried, and she just never let me see it. High school was worse. She made it clear that I wasn't her priority. Said things like, "Don't expect me to be your best friend, and I'm not here to coddle you." I told myself it was just tough love, that some moms were just strict. But then came prom. I didn't even ask her to help with the dress. I bought it secondhand online, paid for it with babysitting money. When she saw it hanging in my room, she rolled her eyes and said, "Try not to look desperate." That was the first time I realized I wasn't just unloved, I was resented. I wasn't her daughter. I was her reminder of something she couldn't forget or forgive. She never said what. She'd hint at sacrifices. Say, "I gave up everything for you." Say, "You have no idea what I went through." But she never said what that was. College was my way out. I got a scholarship, moved 3 states away, and for the first time I felt like I could breathe without asking permission. But I still called her, still tried, sent her my grades, told her about my roommates, mailed her birthday cards. She'd respond with short texts, one-word replies, "Fine, cool." I once wrote her a letter. A real one, poured my heart into it, told her I missed her, that I wanted to understand her, that I loved her. She never mentioned it. Not once. When I came home for Thanksgiving, I found it still sealed, tucked behind the microwave, never even opened. I didn't confront her. I just stopped writing. After graduation, I landed a decent job, moved to a bigger city, tried to build something stable, but she always lingered in the background. I'd send her money when she hinted at bills. I'd check in when I knew she was sick, and every time I got off the phone, I'd feel hollow, like I'd just scratched at a wall hoping to find a door. And then my uncle died, her younger brother. The funeral was small, tense. I hadn't seen most of that side of the family in years. After the service, I stood with my aunt, my mom's sister, and asked her quietly, "What was she like before me?" She hesitated, then said different, softer, "But there's a lot you don't know." I asked what she meant. She looked around like someone might be listening, then whispered, "You weren't supposed to happen." I didn't respond, just nodded. That night I asked my mom directly, "Did you ever want to be a mom?" She didn't flinch, just sipped her tea and said, "Wanting doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with what you're given." I pushed again. "But did you want me?" She looked at me for a long time, then said it was complicated. That was the closest she ever came to an answer. The next day, we got into an argument over something stupid, a bill, a comment. I don't even remember. I said, "Why are you always like this with me?" She shrugged. "Because I don't owe you anything. I'm your daughter." And I stood there, waiting, hoping for some crack, some flicker of remorse. And that's when I begged, "Please, just tell me what I did wrong. Tell me how to fix it." She didn't yell, didn't cry, just looked at me and said, "You're not my problem." That's when it finally hit me. I was never her child, just her burden. I packed my things that same night. I didn't say goodbye, just zipped my suitcase, grabbed my charger, and walked out the front door. The street was quiet, no porch lights, no neighbors, just the sound of my own footsteps and this weird mix of rage and relief sitting in my chest like it was fighting for space. I stayed in a motel 2 towns over. Cheap, kind of damp, but quiet. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to reassemble every moment that had led me to that night. All the birthdays she forgot. All the times she said, "You think life owes you something," when I was just asking for a ride home. All the times I got sick and took care of myself because she had work. And all the ways I kept telling myself it would get better, that maybe she'd get softer with age or time, or if I just did everything perfectly. The truth is, I don't think she ever wanted to get softer. I think she needed something to push against, and I happened to be the thing that never left. I didn't go back to my apartment right away. I stayed gone for a while. Took a week off work, deleted her number from my phone. I told myself I was going no contact, that this was the break I needed to finally start living my own life. But then something weird happened. About a month later, I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize. Her name was Danielle. She said she was my mother's coworker. She wrote, "Hey, I don't know if you've heard, but your mom's been in the hospital." She gave them your name as next of kin. I didn't respond right away. I stared at that message for almost an hour, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Was this supposed to be the moment, the big emotional turning point where I rush to her side and everything changes? I didn't go. I waited 2 days. Then I called the hospital, gave them her name, and asked for an update. The nurse said she was stable, just a scare, something about high blood pressure and stress. I thanked them and hung up. That was it. No collapse, no panic, no urge to get in the car and drive across state lines. Just nothing. But a few days later I got another message. This time it was from her. Just 3 words, "You made this." No context, no greeting, no punctuation, just that. Like her being in the hospital was somehow my fault. Like everything always was. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I just let it sit there, a digital monument to everything she never said out loud but made me feel every single day. I started therapy a month after that. I didn't know where to begin. I told the therapist I didn't have a big traumatic event to unpack, just years of quiet damage. She said, "That's sometimes harder to heal from." At first I laughed. Then I cried. I told her about the unopened birthday card, the sealed letter behind the microwave, the way my mom used to say, "I hope you're not expecting applause whenever I got an A." And then I told her about the one time my mom hugged me, when I was 12, at my grandma's funeral. I remember thinking it felt wrong, like I was borrowing a coat that didn't belong to me, cold on the inside. I asked the therapist if that made me a bad daughter. She said, "That makes you a survivor." I didn't know what to do with that word. Survivor. It felt dramatic, but the more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense. Not surviving a war or a car crash, but surviving the kind of house where love had conditions, where affection had to be earned and still wasn't guaranteed, where silence was a weapon. I started writing things down after that. Memories, fragments, conversations I'd been replaying in my head for years. Like the time I got into my dream college and she said, "Just don't embarrass yourself." Or when I got promoted at work and she asked, "Are they desperate or just blind?" I wrote it all down, not because I wanted to publish it, just because I needed to see it laid out, outside of my body, where it couldn't eat me from the inside anymore. And then something strange happened. I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer, but this time I did. It was Danielle again, her coworker. She said, "Hey, this might sound weird, but I thought you should know something. Your mom's been saying things about you." I asked, "Like what?" "Like how you abandoned her, that you're ungrateful, but also, she keeps telling people you're living with her, that you two are close, that she raised you on her own and you still come back every weekend." I didn't know what to say. It was surreal, like she'd created a version of me she could be proud of just for show, one that never existed, one she never tried to help become real. I thanked Danielle for telling me, hung up, and I sat there for a long time thinking, maybe she didn't hate me. Maybe she just hated who I really was, who I insisted on being. Independent, curious, unapologetic, all the things she'd spent her life trying to suppress in herself. Maybe she looked at me and saw everything she lost, or everything she was told she couldn't be, and instead of protecting it, she punished it. I don't know, I still don't know. And I've stopped trying to understand her completely, but I do know this: the moment she said, "You're not my problem," something inside me shut off. Some engine I'd been running for years, waiting for a scrap of love or recognition. And once it stopped, the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was peaceful. After that, I stopped talking about her to anyone who knew us both. I realized most people weren't interested in the truth. They wanted a version of the story that was easier to digest, a complicated mother, a rebellious daughter, tension that would eventually fade, maybe with time, maybe with age. People love the idea of reconciliation. They think distance is temporary. They don't know what it feels like to walk away not out of anger, but because every part of you knows staying is a slow form of erasure. A few months later, I went back home, not to see her, but to clean out the old storage unit she'd been paying for and now couldn't afford. She texted me the code to the lock, nothing more. No thank you, no context, just the address and a 6-digit number. I pulled up to the unit in the late afternoon. The air smelled like dust and rotting cardboard. Inside were boxes, old ones taped and retaped, some labeled with marker, some not. I didn't know what I was looking for. I told myself I'd just grab what was valuable and get out, but you can't open a box from your childhood and not get pulled in. Inside the first one, a shoebox full of my old school papers, report cards, drawings, stick figures holding hands. One with a note scribbled on the back in my own child handwriting, "Mom smiled today." That broke me more than anything she'd ever said, because I remembered that day. I'd gotten a gold star on a spelling test and ran home to show her. She didn't even look up from her laptop. I'd written that sentence for myself, as a way to make the day feel like it meant something. Like the test mattered. Like I mattered. I sat on the cold concrete floor, sifting through memories I'd tried to forget. A handmade Mother's Day card with "To the best mom in the world" written in shaky letters. I'd signed it with 3 hearts. She never put it on the fridge. I remember asking why. She said, "I'm not into cheesy stuff." Another box had photo albums, most of them half empty, no captions, no dates, pages with one photo on them, then nothing else. I flipped through until I found one that hit harder than I expected. Me, maybe 5 years old, standing next to her. I was looking up at her, smiling like my whole world was standing right beside me. She wasn't looking at the camera. She wasn't looking at me either. Her eyes were off in the distance, her face blank. Like she wasn't even there. I took a picture of that picture with my phone and left the rest. I didn't need to take more. I already carried too much. The next week I got an email from her. She didn't call. She never called. The subject line said, "When you're done being dramatic." The body of the email was 2 paragraphs of deflection. She said I was too sensitive, that I always twisted things, that I was ungrateful for everything she sacrificed, that she had been doing her best unlike me. No apology, not even a fake one, just another attempt to rewrite the past. Like if she said it enough, it would become the truth. I didn't reply. I read it once and archived it. But that line stuck with me. Unlike me, it made me realize how much of her identity was tied to being the victim, the misunderstood martyr, the mother who did it all and got nothing in return. She needed me to be the ungrateful daughter. It justified her distance, her coldness, her silence. She couldn't handle the version of me that saw everything and still tried to love her. Because then the problem wasn't who I was, it was who she chose to be. My therapist once said, "Some people need their children to be reflections, not individuals." I didn't understand that at first, but now it feels obvious. My independence wasn't something to be proud of, it was a threat. Every decision I made that didn't match her narrative made her feel smaller. Like she was losing control over the story she'd built around us. So she stopped seeing me. Not physically, emotionally. She stopped asking questions, stopped showing up. And when I did well, she made sure I knew it wasn't impressive. When I struggled, she reminded me that I'd made my bed. She never told me she was proud, never told me she missed me, never even asked if I was okay, but she'd brag to coworkers that I was doing great, as if the version of me she ignored somehow belonged to her when it made her look good. The irony is, I used to pray for her approval, beg for it. Now the idea of earning it feels like trying to win a game where the rules change every time you get close. I've stopped playing. I still see her name sometimes in my inbox, on missed calls. I don't block her, I just don't engage. It's not out of anger, it's not punishment, it's protection. Because I know now that loving her didn't make me weak, but needing her to love me, that almost broke me. And I'm not letting her finish the job. After that, I started noticing how many people had mothers they didn't talk about. It became this quiet club I hadn't known I was part of until I stopped pretending I wasn't. Friends would say things like, "My mom's complicated," or "We just don't talk much," or "She's old school, you know." But behind the vague phrasing was always the same look, a kind of guarded exhaustion. Like they'd spent years learning how to defend against someone who was supposed to protect them. I stopped assuming everyone had what I didn't, and that was freeing in a way I didn't expect. Because for a long time, I thought I was defective, like I'd missed some vital step in childhood that would have unlocked her love. I thought maybe I was too emotional or not emotional enough, that I didn't talk enough, or talk too much, that I should have been more like the daughter she wanted, quieter, prettier, better at hiding how much everything hurt. But the older I got, the more I realized, love isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass, and if someone only gives it when you're useful to them, that's not love, that's leverage. One night I was out with a few coworkers and one of them brought their mom. She was warm, loud, a little embarrassing in that endearing way moms sometimes are. She kept touching her daughter's arm mid-sentence, like she couldn't believe she was lucky enough to be hers. I watched them laugh over something I didn't hear, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel jealousy. I felt grief, quiet, still, heavy grief, because I finally understood that was never coming for me, not with her. Not even if she changed, because too many years had passed, too many cracks had been paved over with silence, and the foundation was never real to begin with. That night I called my dad for the first time in almost a decade. I wasn't sure if the number would still work, but it did. He answered on the third ring, and the first thing he said was, "Is everything okay?" I didn't even say hello, just sat there, not sure where to start. Eventually, I asked him why he left. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because I couldn't be in that house anymore." And I thought maybe if I left, she'd treat you better. She didn't, I said. I know. I asked him why he never came back, why he let her tell everyone he abandoned us, why he let me believe it. He said, because I did. I abandoned you. I thought I was escaping her, but I left you behind with the worst parts of her, and I'll never stop regretting that. That was the closest I'd ever gotten to an apology from either of them, and it didn't fix anything, but it softened something in me. I asked if he ever thought about reaching out. He said he tried, that she threatened to file a restraining order, said I didn't need confusion in my life, that she told him I hated him. I sat in my kitchen listening to this man cry on the phone, a man I hadn't heard from in years, and all I could think was, I should be angry, I should be screaming, but I wasn't. I just felt tired, like the weight of everything had finally settled in my bones and there was nothing left to fight. We talked for hours. He told me stories about when I was little, things I didn't remember. He said I used to collect leaves and call them tree hugs, that I'd try to fix broken flowers by taping their stems. He said I was gentle, and that it scared my mom. I asked why. He said because gentle people don't survive in the world she came from, and she didn't want to watch you get hurt, so she became the hurt. That sentence has stayed with me. I don't know if it excuses anything, I don't think it does, but it made something click. My mom didn't just choose to be cold. She believed it was the only way to make sure I didn't grow up expecting kindness. She thought she was preparing me, that the world would be cruel, and if she could be cruel first, then maybe I'd survive it better. But that's not how it works. You don't protect people by wounding them first. You don't teach resilience by withholding love. You teach fear. You teach shame. You teach a child to search every room for danger before they sit down, and eventually, they stop entering the room at all. That's what happened to me. And now, even years later, I still hesitate when someone's kind to me. I still wait for the catch. I still flinch at certain tones. I still have to remind myself that love doesn't have to hurt, that not everyone sees affection as a transaction. And most days I believe that, but not all days. Some days I still hear her voice in my head, cutting through my thoughts like a blade. Don't be dramatic. You're not special. You made your choice. And I still want to scream, what choice? The choice to exist, the choice to need you, the choice to hope, but then I breathe. And I remind myself, I don't owe her understanding anymore. I don't owe her forgiveness. I owe myself peace, and peace starts with telling the truth. Even if no one ever believes me, even if she tells her own version, even if the world still sees her as a tired single mother who did her best, I know better now, and sometimes knowing is the only closure you get. After that conversation with my dad, I started putting pieces together that never quite made sense before. Things I'd buried or explained away. I remembered how every time a teacher tried to talk to my mom about me, about anything, even good things, she'd deflect, dismiss it, say I was too sensitive or needed to grow a thicker skin. I used to think she said that to protect me from overconfidence. Now I think she couldn't stand the idea of someone else seeing value in me that she didn't. I remembered the time I broke my wrist falling off a swing when I was 7. I walked home alone, holding my arm, crying quietly because I knew she hated tears. When I got home, she looked at me and said, if it was really broken, you wouldn't be standing there. She didn't take me to the ER until the next morning. I wore that cast for 6 weeks and she never signed it. Told me it's not a yearbook. I remembered how she used to buy me clothes a size too small, how she'd say, you'll grow into discipline, how she kept a scale in the kitchen, how she'd purse her lips if I went back for seconds. I told myself these were just her quirks, that every mom had her thing. But none of my friends' moms did those things, and every time I tried to talk about it, I'd find myself minimizing it before I even finished the sentence. It wasn't that bad, she just had high standards, she worked a lot. But working hard doesn't make you cold. Being tired doesn't mean you stop trying. I know that now. And I know that love without warmth isn't love, it's obligation. She once told me, you don't have to like me, you just have to respect me. I think about that a lot, because I did respect her. Too much, maybe. I respected her moods, her silences, her thresholds. I walked on eggshells so often I stopped noticing the cuts, and in the end, that respect turned into fear, then distance, then indifference. Now it's just quiet. I haven't spoken to her in almost a year. She still sends messages sometimes, passive-aggressive ones. Hope you're still too busy to call. Guess you forgot who raised you. Don't worry, I won't bother you anymore. She always does though, and I don't respond, not because I don't feel anything, but because I've finally learned that not all pain deserves a reply. Sometimes silence is the most honest answer you can give someone who never really listened. I still go to therapy. I still unpack things I didn't even know were inside me. Like how I flinch when someone raises their voice not because she hit me, but because her anger never had a warning. Like how I say sorry when I haven't done anything wrong, just to keep the peace. Like how I apologize for crying, or existing, or taking up too much space. My therapist told me something a few weeks ago that stuck with me. You're still waiting for her to notice how much she hurt you. But what if she already knows and just doesn't care? That broke something open in me. Because I'd never let myself think that. It was easier to believe she was unaware, detached, confused, but maybe she knew exactly what she was doing. Maybe she just didn't think I mattered enough to do it differently. That kind of clarity doesn't bring peace, but it brings honesty, and I'd rather live in a painful truth than a comforting lie. I've stopped trying to explain our relationship to people. I no longer say it's complicated. I say we don't speak, and if they ask why, I just say it wasn't healthy. That's enough. That's the truth. The rest isn't owed to them. It's mine. One of the last texts she ever sent me said, "You'll regret this one day." I used to believe her. I'd lie awake wondering if I'd be alone forever, if she got sick, if she died suddenly, if I'd hate myself for not making things right. But now I think the only thing I regret is trying so long to make something right that was never mine to fix. A few weeks ago, I found a voicemail from her, one I must have missed months earlier. It was short, just her voice clipped and flat. Thought I'd hear from you by now. Guess I was wrong. Again. I deleted it without listening to the end, because she wasn't wrong. She just didn't know me anymore. And the version of me she expected, the one who chased, who bent, who begged, that version doesn't exist anymore. I built something better, someone steadier, someone who knows the difference between love and survival. I don't need her approval. I don't need her blessing. I don't even need her story. I have my own now. And I'm not sorry for choosing peace over proximity. I'm not sorry for choosing myself. What I didn't expect after cutting ties was how long the echo would stay. I thought once I created distance, things would get quiet. But that's not how it works. The voice doesn't leave your head just because the person is no longer in your life. It just changes tone. Instead of yelling, it whispers. Instead of direct insults, it becomes doubt. Every success is met with that old internal question. Would she approve? Would she even care? I don't let those thoughts stay long, but they still show up, especially when good things happen. The first time I got promoted, I stared at the email for a full hour before I told anyone. And even when I did, I told my friends quietly, like it was something I should be modest about. I still shrink around joy, like I'm waiting for it to be taken away, and I know where that comes from. You learn not to trust good things when the first person who was supposed to celebrate you never did. You learn to keep good news close to your chest, not out of humility, out of survival. I've started noticing how many of my decisions are shaped by her voice, how I hesitate before setting boundaries, afraid I'll sound ungrateful, how I over-explain myself just to make sure no one can twist my words, how I still flinch when someone sighs in frustration like it's about to turn into something worse. The body remembers what the heart worked hard to forget. I started dating again a few months ago, slowly, cautiously. I told myself I'd take it easy, and I did, but even then, I saw the patterns. I'd apologize for things that weren't my fault. I'd wait for rejection before it even arrived. I'd withhold certain parts of myself out of fear they'd make me too much. One night we were having dinner, and I laughed a little too loudly. Just once. I saw the person I was with smile, not mockingly, genuinely. Like they liked seeing me happy, and I froze. I excused myself to the bathroom, stared at my reflection, and had to coach myself into believing I wasn't in trouble. Because somewhere deep in my wiring, joy had become suspicious. Like happiness was a trap, a test, a setup for shame. I'm unlearning that, slowly. It takes time. Sometimes I think healing is just the process of telling yourself every day that the past can't rewrite the present unless you let it. And some days that's easier to believe than others. A few weeks ago, I ran into someone from my hometown, an old neighbor. We were at a bookstore, both reaching for the same paperback. They recognized me first, said my name like it was a memory they weren't sure was still real. We chatted for a bit, surface stuff, work, weather, the city. Then she asked, "Do you still talk to your mom?" I hesitated, said no, not really. She nodded like she already knew. Then she said she used to talk about you a lot back then. What did she say? I asked before I could stop myself. That you were strong-willed, too smart for your own good. That you were always trying to prove something. I smiled. Sounds about right. She sounded proud, the neighbor added. I didn't respond, because I didn't know what to do with that. If it was true, it was too late. If it wasn't, I didn't want to spend more years chasing a compliment that was never meant for me. Later that night, I thought about what it meant to sound proud. How different that was from showing it. How she'd never said those words to me, never looked me in the eye and said, "I'm proud of you." Maybe she couldn't. Maybe the words would have cost her something, her story, her control, her power. Or maybe she never felt it, just performed it for other people when it made her look good. I'll never know, and I've stopped trying to decode it. That's been the hardest part, not getting answers, not finding a clean ending, just sitting in the ambiguity, accepting that I may never understand her, that I don't have to, that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation or closure. Sometimes it just looks like waking up and not thinking about her first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's saying no and not feeling guilty. Sometimes it's letting myself laugh without checking the room first. And sometimes it's just being okay with not knowing what kind of mother she was, because I know what kind of daughter I was. I tried, harder than I should have, longer than anyone should need to, and that's enough. I was enough, even if she never saw it. The hardest part about letting go isn't the distance. It's learning to live in a world that no longer runs on proving your worth to someone who never intended to see it. There's an emptiness at first, a silence that feels less like peace and more like withdrawal. For a long time I kept waiting for the instinct to call her back, for the guilt to win, for some holiday, some emergency, some distant ache to override everything I knew. But it never came. What came instead was something quieter, more permanent, a kind of steadiness I hadn't known I was allowed to feel. I don't mean joy, I don't mean relief. I mean the absence of the question, will she ever love me the way I need her to? Once that question disappears, everything else rearranges. I don't brace myself when the phone rings. I don't reread text messages looking for what I did wrong. I don't shrink my voice in rooms that remind me of hers. And in all that absence, something started to grow. I began to fill the spaces she left behind. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the version of me that never got to breathe around her. I read more. I started journaling again. I redecorated my apartment without hearing her voice in my head telling me what was tacky. I wore things I liked. I smiled at strangers. I let myself be soft, not to impress anyone. Just because softness stopped feeling like weakness, it felt like choice. I started talking more openly with people in my life, friends I'd known for years who never knew the full story. I stopped saying she did her best. I started saying her best didn't include loving me, and I watched how other people reacted. Some with sympathy, some with discomfort, some with quiet relief, like they'd been waiting for permission to say the same about their own parents. That's the thing no one tells you. Estrangement feels isolating until you start speaking it out loud. Then you realize you were never alone. You were just part of a story no one wanted to admit was common. I met someone kind, someone patient, and for a long time I didn't know how to let them close. Not because they weren't safe, but because I didn't trust myself to recognize safety. They never asked for explanations. They just stayed, asked small, simple questions, paid attention to what made me flinch, what made me go quiet, what made me reach for the wall instead of the person. One night I told them about my mom. Not the surface version, the real one. The details, the little moments, the stuff that still showed up in my dreams. I kept waiting for them to pull away, to say I was too damaged, too much. Instead they said, that must have been exhausting. You were just a kid. And then they said, I'm really glad you're still here. I cried, not because it was romantic, but because no one had ever said that to me, not once, not even close. And suddenly, I realized how starved I'd been for words that didn't come with strings. I still don't know what kind of person I would have become if she'd loved me differently. Maybe I'd be less guarded, less cautious. Maybe I'd be louder, freer, softer by default. But maybe I wouldn't have learned how to listen the way I do now, or how to sit with other people's pain without trying to fix it, or how to spot someone shrinking in a crowded room and say the exact thing they didn't know they needed. Sometimes what we survive becomes the reason we're able to see others more clearly. I don't romanticize the pain. I don't thank her for it. But I no longer let it define me either. She doesn't get to be the reason I stay small, or bitter, or afraid to be loved. She was the beginning of my story, not the author of it. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that we are not obligated to stay loyal to the version of ourselves that survived our parents. We get to become something else, something stronger, something whole, not in spite of them, but because we finally decided to stop waiting and start living. It's been almost 3 years since I last heard her voice. The silence doesn't hurt the way it used to. At first it felt unnatural, like I was betraying something sacred, like I owed her my loyalty just because she gave birth to me. But now I understand that biology isn't love, proximity isn't safety, and obligation is not the same as connection. Some mornings I still wonder if she thinks about me, if she ever tells herself a version of the story where she tried, where I was the cold one, where she did everything she could. I used to want to correct that story, to defend myself, to prove that I was good, that I tried, but I don't anymore, because that part of me, the part that lived to be understood by someone who refused to see me, doesn't run the show now. These days I write more. I go on walks. I cook dinner for people who sit at my table and laugh with their mouths open. I don't flinch at laughter anymore. I let it echo. I let it fill the room she used to haunt in my head. And it does. It really does. I've stopped looking for her in mirrors, in crowds, in old habits. I don't measure myself against her approval anymore. I measure myself against peace, against how I feel when I wake up and realize I don't owe anyone an apology just for existing. I used to think I needed a mother to feel whole, that healing meant finding a way back to her. But healing isn't about going back. It's about learning how to move forward with the scars. It's learning how to mother yourself when no one else ever did. And I have, slowly, clumsily. But I have. I tell myself the things she never did. I say, you're allowed to rest. You're not difficult. You don't have to earn love. I keep photos of myself as a child on my desk, not because I'm sentimental, but because I want to remember who I'm doing this for. That little girl with the too big backpack and the eyes that always looked like they were waiting for something. She waited a long time, longer than anyone should have to, and I don't want her to wait anymore. So now I speak gently, to her, to myself, to the world. I break cycles with quiet choices, with boundaries, with softness, with silence when necessary. People ask sometimes, if she called you tomorrow, what would you do? And I never know how to answer that. Because people want happy endings. They want repair, forgiveness, reunions. But sometimes the happy ending is you, still standing, still soft, still open to life, even after everything. Sometimes the happy ending is no ending at all, just peace, just breath, just waking up and knowing you're safe in your own skin. So no, I don't hate her. I don't wish her pain. I just don't carry her anymore. Not her expectations, not her silence, not her voice in my head. I carry myself, finally. And I think that's the most loving thing I've ever done.